Hello, everyone, and welcome to a little quick update of everything that's happened this past weekend. We are heading into the Critics' Choice Awards, the PGA, the DGA, with a very open race, as this most of this season has been. We're like, what's going to win Best Picture? There's like six films that can, and I think we've got a pretty solid front runner at this point after this past weekend. Critics' Choice Awards gave the Best Picture award to Anora, the only film that has ever won just Best Picture there. PGA gave it to Anora, and then DGA gave Sean Baker, maybe the biggest surprise of all, the Best Director win there, which has a very, very accurate trajectory with what happens at the Oscars. So we'll get into each ceremony, but what are your thoughts on how this past weekend has changed the race, Anthony?
Yeah, just to clarify, you mean it's the first time that Critics' Choice have given the Best Picture winner only one award, and that being Best
Yeah,
Picture, um,
yeah,
which is it's definitely surprising, and that to me was more indicative of the season that we were currently experiencing, where everything is all over the place. Whether it be the films we have, I do think maybe we realized this way back, but it only started to dawn on me that I think the strikes is really affecting us this season because of the movies that were in production last year now 2 years ago when the strikes were ongoing. But between that, the competition, the scandals, it seemed all over the place. And so the idea that a movie could win Best Picture and that be the only award it wins at Critics' Choice, after winning nothing at Golden Globe, it seemed like, okay, we're all up in the air and everybody's going to have their own say on what the movie of the year is. And then we went into the guilds, and they told a very different story of that. It is a very clear race, and it was surprising how lockstep the guilds seemed to be. I mean, WGA hasn't happened yet, but we could almost assume that the Writers Guild are also going to go for Anora, and I don't think
yeah.
SAG Ensemble is out of the running, especially if maybe the Wicked Love shows up in the individual categories, which we can talk about. But I think it's very possible that they win SAG Ensemble. And so at that point, yeah, you're kind of looking at, all steam ahead towards Anora, which is, it's surprising and not surprising. I think that it's a very polarizing year for films. And I think Anora is proving to be one of the more well-liked consensus pictures. I think my resistance to it a little bit has just been what about this movie is so different from Sean Baker's other movies that had really struggled to connect with the mainstream. And it could be just that he's proven himself time and time again that this was kind of, his coming out party as far as the industry taking him seriously. And I do think the Can win early on solidified this film as a major contender. And it has Neon, which I probably think maybe has campaigned his film the best than any other movie from his past filmography.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of makes sense to me because when people were talking about what would do best on a preferential ballot, which
Yeah.
is what the PGA is the only other body that votes that way, and is one of the most indicative because it is the only other body besides the Oscars that vote on a preferential ballot. And lots of people brought up Conclave, which makes sense to me, but when it comes to the films that rank high, I just don't see Conclave being top. I don't sense a lot of passion around it, and I do think Anora. I think Anora could be number two on some on a Wicked number one ballot. It could be number two on it could be a number two on any of the ballots pretty much. So I think that helps it when you eliminate all of them.
Yeah.
I think it would be high on all of them. So I think that helps. It just seems I mean, like you said, the Can is maybe the strongest starting point it seems for award season now lately with the films. It won the Palme d'Or there. It also won the DGA. And I think the last time that happened was what was it? Was Marty in 1955, which then went on to win Best Picture, Director, Actor, and Screenplay at the Oscars. So yeah, it's looking pretty good for Honor, but I do agree there's a world where I don't know, maybe I don't know what would have to happen. I think maybe Conclave wins SAG Ensemble and BAFTA, and then it looks maybe closer. But even don't
I'm not
full.
looking to Conclave to do really. Again, I continue to feel like
Well,
Conclave is screenplay and that's it. I don't know what
yeah,
would be number two at this point.
yeah,
I mean, I really think that DGA really kind of shook this all up because I do see a world where Anora wins Critics' Choice in the fashion it did and wins PGA,
hmm
and it still is a little bit more of a question mark. Now, because it won DGA, I just think it's solidifying itself so strongly. And when you look back at the history of post 2008, so in the expanded era, three films have been able to win WGA, DGA, and PGA. And those were The Hurt Locker, Argo, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, all movies that went on to win Best Picture. So
Yeah.
given that we assume it's going to win WGA, at that point, it kind of seems inevitable. And I agree with you. I think that the tonal balance of the film, I think, means that it appeals to a lot of people. It is a comedy, but it also has very serious dramatic heft. And I do. It appeals to a theme that I think you see a lot in a lot of Best Picture contenders and winners, as far as this innocence lost. We've seen it with a little bit with Everything Ever All at Once. I think there was definitely a juvenile spirit to that movie that you can't ignore, especially with Stephanie Hsu's performance. But Licorice Pizza was a nominee. That definitely had a lot of that. Moonlight, I think, is a film that you're going to see some comparisons to as far as having a more young protagonist, which is then interesting to compare because those are the films in the post-trumpeting to win Best Picture. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of think pieces on what it says about where we are to compare those two films if Anora does win Best Picture. So, yeah, and as far as if it didn't win WGA, the films that it would be joining, as far as winning Directors Guild and Producers Guild and not winning the Writers Guild but being nominated, is Shape of Water and Oppenheimer. And so, again, two movies that went on to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
So I think the more interesting conversation is where do you go with director? Because I feel like we both agree that Sean Baker is going to show up in either screenplay or directing, and you kind of just have to pick which one you think has a
Which one? Or yeah,
or both. He could win both. I don't think he'll win both just because he's a sole, writer director. So it feels like I just don't think they like to do that anymore, where they give one person four, because I think he's going to win editing.
Yeah, that would be four.
And he's a producer, so he'll win picture. So I just don't see that him winning four. Three, yes. Four, no.
Do you know who the last person who won 4 Oscars and won Oscars is?
Oh God, I feel like it should be like
company.
Warren Beatty or somebody. Who was it?
That would have been company with Walt Disney. So I don't know how that's going to happen. Which was all. So I would say I don't know. He would win picture, director, screenplay, and editing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's in is actually probably screenplay. I do think we can talk about a Critics' Choice. The Substance won screenplay there, and that's where fiction first started its trajectory. Where I think most of the season people were like, Oppenheimer is winning Best Picture. It'll probably just win screenplay too. But then American Fiction, a more writerly kind of film in a way, less about the direction, won there, and then it continued to win at the BAFTA, and then it just won.
Cooler film in some regards.
Cool.
It's a cool kid.
I think The Substance. It's super original, and I think they like the film, and I think they want to award Farja somewhere, and I feel like that's where they could probably do it. And in director, I just think his big competition is Corbet, and I just feel like I know lots of people are bringing up lots of different issues of why he may not, why he didn't win either Critics' Choice or DGA. I think it really comes down to he's newish to the field. This is most people's first exposure to him, and usually they don't do that for directors. Just like your first breakthrough directing feature, you're gonna win director. Sean Baker has been around a little while.
Even if with the smaller presence that he's had. I mean, The Florida Project was an Oscar-nominated film in an above-the-line category for Willem Dafoe. So he does have a presence, and he's been talked about, and he's built up his credibility. So, yes, I agree. I do think that could be hurting him. I don't think the AI thing is hindering him that much, but it's a small factor that maybe some people are voting, not as strongly in his favor. But I don't think that's going to be the deciding thing. Ultimately, I feel like it's been what I've been saying the whole season. I didn't know Anora was going to be the one to benefit from, which is that I just didn't see The Brutalist being the sort of rewatchable movie that people wanted to champion. I think people respect The Brutalist, but I'm not sure it is activating that sort of guttural passion that we see these movies win with. Oppenheimer, Parasite, Spotlight. These are movies that people, just couldn't shut up about. And I think The Brutalist, because of its runtime, because of a little bit of its inaccessibility, they were, I'm sure, prioritizing these 70 millimeter runs. It had a much more delayed release structure than Anora. I think that ended up, just keeping some people at bay from it. And also it's a tougher film. Anora ultimately is a comedy for much of its runtime. And I think it is a more appealing film in that regard. But I agree with you. I think The Substance is coming on very strong. We always talk about with screenplay, especially in that category, a lot of times they give points to what is the most original film. And The Substance certainly is that. And I do think that winning Directors Guild is it's a huge accomplishment, and they're one of the guilds that tends to agree with the Oscars more so than others. So I do think that the Anora winning package is going to be picture, director, and editing. Um, so do you agree with that? And then substance.
I
What's
do. That's
okay?
the three I have, and then I still have Demi Moore winning Best Actress. I feel like Mikey Madison has proven, even in places like Critics' Choice, where it can win picture, and she doesn't have to come along with it.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious. Maybe we can jump to SAG now. Do you have Anora as SAG ensemble?
it's funny because back when Honora was like, it's funny how we've like full circled this entire season. I was like,
It's been
okay,
going on that long that we're like, let's go back to
yeah,
what we thought of in September.
yeah, yeah. It's funny because back then I did have Honora winning SAG ensemble because I saw the film, I thought it was the front runner, and it's a great ensemble. I think it's between that and Wicked. Honestly, I don't think it's Amelia Perez, especially given I think SAG is like the most socially aware of all of the bodies that they're going to go for that. And it's we talked about it when we did our SAG nomination predictions. It's not like the most ensemble. I would say even Honora is a bigger ensemble than Amelia Perez in a way. Amelia Perez is just like four actresses mainly.
Wicked would definitely fit in the mold of the Black Panther win,
Mhm.
as far as this very popular film um, that spoke to SAG in a particular way, and that would be I think the big win for that film in this award season, winning SAG Ensemble.
Yeah.
And would indicate that it is maybe a runner-up for Best Picture, in the same way that I think Black Panther was probably your third runner-up behind Roma and Green Book that year, given
Mhm.
the craft categories and then having SAG Ensemble. And Wicked it probably is falling into line in the same way. Does the Anora support show up in Ensemble, and the Wicked support show up in either Best Actress or, more notably and more likely, Best Supporting Actress with Ariana Grande and then Cynthia Erivo for lead? I could see that happening. And then Anora just doing an everything everywhere sort of run where it wins SAG, PGA, WGA, DGA, and then goes on to win,
Just everything.
everything, which would be shocking. But I wouldn't be that surprised.
It would
Honestly.
probably miss BAFTA like everything everywhere, though, I would
Yeah.
guess. It doesn't seem, I don't think that, I think BAFTA would either go for Conclave or Brutalist at this point still.
Yeah. I feel like this is turning into a very American season as far as what we're awarding. I mean, even just the Demi Moore win feels very much like Hollywood is responding to this.
The thing about Nora is we really should have maybe noticed this earlier. It didn't underperform nomination wise anywhere. It pretty much got all of the nominations it needed to everywhere. So it showed strength. I think that Golden Globe winning nothing thing, I think threw a lot of us off.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the same time, this last time that happened, where the Golden Globes did not honor the film that would ultimately win Best Picture, I feel was Spotlight. And that was the last time we had this sort of what is the front runner year. I mean, the seasons are very synonymous. Because I'm not counting the Coda year, because I mean the Golden Globes they didn't exist that year. They existed on.
Well, they still gave it to Troy Kotsur, I think. So.
Exactly, but even then, like it's hard it's so weird to me, like the fact that the Golden Globes just didn't happen.
Oh, they just tweeted out that.
Yeah,
what a year.
Yeah. So who are you? Because so going back to SAG Ensemble, then are you predicting either the Wicked ladies to win there, or do you think the Critics' Choice cemented Zoe Saldana?
I still feel like this is probably the best chance Grande has at winning anywhere. I think she had a chance here than she had at Critics' Choice, especially given the voting period, because the Amelia Perez thing did not factor into Critics' Choice. I still just wonder when it comes to a voting body of 160,000 people. Yes, it will help that Wicked is obviously more seen, it's more popular, but I think to a lot of actors, which is the majority of the people voting, she is still seen as a newcomer. This is kind of like her breakthrough, her first big performance, whereas Saldana has been in the industry for like years and years and build up to this point. I don't know. I don't know how actors vote in general, but I don't know if they're maybe more likely to go for an actor who has maybe built up this moment a little more than Grande has. But I would say Saldana right now. I do kind of think she might just sweep, and I do think even if Grande wins SAG, Saldana will still win the Oscar because one, I think she'll win the BAFTA, and that will be during the voting period where SAG will not be, and she also has more support within the industry. I would say she's been in like three of the biggest films of all time. You know how many people work on those films below the line and all the branches. I feel like Saldana just has more industry support than Grande, but she could still win this one award, I think.
I think ultimately, and we'll see, because so far we haven't had awards voted on post the Gascon scandal, and even then, Saldana and Gomez, I think, have um, been very professional in how they handled this situation.
Yeah.
I do think that, like we see a lot of times, when the actor is not the one causing the scandal, the actors get sympathy for having to deal with this. And I think,
Mhm.
honestly, setting aside how they're dealing with it and that they're dealing with it, professionally, I do think the fact that Amelia Perez is losing momentum in other races is kind of concentrating all the people who still like the film and want to see it awarded, the same people that did get it to 13 nominations at the Oscars. They're kind of all going for Saldana, and then you add on the career achievement, having a very impressive quarter century of a career. Yeah, I do think that Zoe Saldana can continue to build up this momentum. And I do think that people are proving to compartmentalize their feelings on the film with their feelings with her. Because I honestly think that people aren't really, they're using this as a way to honor her.
And it's not going to continue to hurt her, which
Yeah.
helps. I think the whole Carlos Sofia Gascon situation, obviously she said she's going to settle down. I don't know if she's going to even show up at the Oscars at this point. So I think it will not continue to get worse. So that's also helpful. So yeah, the other main question I have is if Anora is like this strong Best Picture frontrunner, usually those films get like one or two other wins, like maybe surprise wins. Do you think if Kieran Culkin loses to Yuri Borisov anywhere that he might end up being a surprise winner? Because I think if Yuri Borisov like surprises at BAFTA, Kieran Culkin's not in Best Picture. Yuri Borisov is. I could maybe see it happening. I would still probably say Culkin just because he's too strong.
I think it's a little too far fetched to imagine that Yuri Borisov is the second. Just because I just like, what is his scene? I rewatched the movie today amid this now new development that
Yes.
we find ourselves in, and he's good. He's a good, solid supporting performance, and he's definitely necessary for, I think, the climax of the film. The best scene of the film, which is that final scene. But I struggle to find what people could really like. I don't think there's enough there where Kieran Culkin is a co-lead, Edward Norton, the degree of difficulty as far as playing a real life person, doing the singing, being, I believe, a 4-time nominee at this point. He's up
Yeah.
there. I just think there are more bona fides to the other performances. So I think Yuri Borisov is my third probably now.
Yeah.
And I think he has a high jump to clear to get above Norton and Culkin. So I don't because Shape of Water had 3 acting nominations for Sally Hawkins, Richard Jenkins, and Octavia Spencer, and it didn't win any, but it went on to win 4 other Oscars. So I don't think you always need an acting win. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't see a world where I think Anora's best shot at an acting win is the ensemble win at SAG, and if it doesn't win that, then it doesn't need it in order to
Just like Shape of Water did. I think that's maybe similar. Yeah. Where it's considered not Del Toro's best work, but maybe like the moment for him. So I think that could be similar to Baker.
As far as the other big, huge thing to come out of Critics' Choice, what do you make of Best Director? Because frankly,
I still don't.
It is so shocking. And I thought he played his first thing he said in his speech was like, "I'm going to win the Oscar." He's like, "I'm not nominated." Yeah. I thought it was very funny, poking fun at what is it kind of. In a way, that's kind of how I hope these voting bodies do vote, that they don't let the Oscars dictate how they pick their winners. But at the same time, it is so strange to see such an out of their pick. What I felt is that it could indicate that preferential system where if you're voting for, in the case that you're a Critics' Choice member and you voted your Best Picture number 1, whatever you feel like number 1 is, and ultimately that would to be Anora, maybe Wicked was that consistent number 2, and so if you voted your favorite for Best Picture, then you were like, all right, but Wicked deserves high contention for these other awards, and so I'll give it John M. Chu. It's strange to me that he wins and not the actors. I felt like the actors would be the beneficiary of goodwill towards Wicked. So I don't know if it'll mean anything long term, but I do think it's interesting that it continues to give Wicked a headline where it's it wins an award. It gets over the finish line, whether it's Golden Globe winning that, Box Office and Cinematic Achievement Award, it's Critics' Choice. It continues to win something at a lot of these places and get in. So it's surprising. I don't know if it'll mean anything now that Anora has trounced everywhere else, but I definitely think it's rising in the ranks above other contenders. I feel like at this point, I would definitely say at this point it's top 5.
I would say it's definitely top five. Yeah, I can't make any sense of it honestly. I don't even know. You'd have to look back. It probably was a long time ago that the Critics' Choice gave Best Director to someone who wasn't even nominated.
Mhm.
I don't know when that happened was. It's pretty rare, but I do think it was important. I think they probably wanted a moment to have Wicked represented on stage, and because they don't do the technical stuff during the ceremony, this was the only moment for it. I would have thought it would have been something else, but yeah, I think it maybe just comes down to the fact that it was an extremely close race between probably him, Corbet, and Baker, and I don't know, maybe like Villeneuve or something. Maybe it was just like a ton of split votes, and he just like barely scooched by. But yeah, that's really the only sense I can make of it. But yeah.
In the expanded era, the only person to win the Critics' Choice Best Directing prize and not get nominated was Ben Affleck.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. The Brutalist only won Best Actor. It did lose, I mean, score, which it won't compete with challenges at the Oscars. But cinematography, Nosferatu won there. I've seen some people thinking maybe that can surprise at the Oscars. I still kind of feel like it's The Brutalist. I think the main comparison for Nosferatu, Blade Runner 2049 was probably the last non-Best Picture nominee to win cinematography. And I feel like that had the whole Roger Deakins factor around it, not have. So I still think it's probably going to be The Brutalist, but it's worth mentioning.
The Brutalist, other than the Golden Globes, I think its best audience, as far as the votership, is going to be the Oscars. I feel like that's most in line.
We saw that with the nomination. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that despite maybe coming up short at these other places, of course, we can talk also about SAG, whether Adrian Brody's going to pull ahead there because he has been proving to do very well. I just think that I wouldn't count out Brutalist in certain categories. But I do think it potentially getting an above the line win, other than Brody, is looking slimmer and slimmer by the day.
Yeah.
So who do you have for SAG Best Actor? Do you have Brody or do you have Chalamet?
I think SAG will be Timothy just because Brody was the only thing for that film, and what Complete Unknown got 4 nominations, I believe.
It got 4 because it got Ensemble, Norton, Barbaro, and Chalamet.
Yeah, I still think it'll be Brody in the end because I think then he'll win BAFTA. I do think in general, I feel like when it comes to like the performances that the Academy and the actors in general go for, I feel like you have to connect to the character, and I don't think you Bob Dylan is a person that it remains at a distance because that is who he is as a person. I feel like you connect to Brody's character and his emotional journey a lot more. I also just think The Brutalist is the stronger film at the end of the day. I do think when you look at past Best Actor winners, the last one who won, was the only one for the film, I believe, was Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea, and I think Brody and The Brutalist are likely to win something else outside of Brody rather than Chalamet winning something else for the film outside of.
I think Complete Unknown is looking to the actors and only the actors at this point. I think the only places it can win is Norton and Chalamet. So we'll see. It's interesting. Again, I feel like we're narrowing down the potential winners at this point. But listen, we're still, it. I know that we're a month away, but right now is when we have to be, locked in because this is the voting is going to open very soon. I'm sure
Today.
Some people have already done their ballot.
Yeah.
And so, over the next couple days, we'll see.
I think that is pretty much it for this past weekend. You guys comment your thoughts on how this changed your predictions down below, all that fun stuff. I do think the acting races are looking pretty solidified, but who knows, maybe not. We still got 2 ceremonies to go. So yeah, comment your changed predictions, your thoughts on Anora as a Best Picture winner. I think it'll probably age pretty well, better than some of the other alternatives we had. So yeah, comment all that stuff, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.